Welcome to the Building with Metal podcast, presented by McElroy Metal. Whether you're a contractor, architect, designer, or building owner, we're here to help you build better with metal roofing and siding products.
Hello, and thanks for joining the show today. We're thrilled today to have our experts from Sherwin-Williams with us today. We have Carraway and Rachel Ortiz. Ladies, would you like to introduce yourself to our guests?
Sure. My name is Carraway. I'm with Sherwin-Williams Coil Coating. I'm a sales account manager. And of course, McElroy is one of my customers. And just a little bit about me. I have about 24 years of experience in the steel industry. I started with a steel service center out of Houston, Texas. We bought both bare metal and pre-painted metal, and I was a corporate procurement manager there. Dealt a lot with pre-painted metal, from everything from HVAC to lighting fixture to appliance to doors to building products. After 17 years there, I decided to make a career change and reached out to one of my good friends at Sherwin-Williams. And here I am 6 years later, 6+ years later, and dealing with paint now. So that's a little bit about my background.
How about you, Rachel?
So I've been at Sherwin-Williams for 7 years. I worked in the biological testing field and then moved over into coatings. I started in our tint evaluation group, moved into our S&P product line, then worked with manufactured products. So that's where Kerry and I started working together. And then most recently, I have shifted into working in our color science department, where I run a lab here in Garland, Texas, and also in Minneapolis, Minnesota, doing custom matching for our Fluoropon and Alumapon brands.
Oh, fun. So I assume you take and try to go to the southern regions in the winter and the northern in the summer?
That's right. I sometimes Minnesota is the summer more.
Smart lady.
Yeah.
Smart lady. Well, Rachel, I haven't interacted directly with you in the past. So I'm looking forward to getting to know you better today. Kerry, of course, and I have worked closely together over the last few years. So always a good reason to see a good friend. So with that said, let's go ahead and jump in. Kerry, I think first let's start with you. So when customers are thinking about making a purchase of metal roof or wall panels, how important really is the decision about what kind of paint system they go with?
I think it's a very important decision. A couple of things in understanding paint. What happens with paint, the first part of the paint system and the most important part of the paint system is the paint resins. And in the paint resin systems and the different paint systems that you have just like most things in life, you have a good, better, and best system. So if you start with a good system, that's a polyester resin system. It's a very durable, very good system. Is used in a lot of different applications outside of building products, such as manufactured products, which usually are HVAC, garage door, entry door, all those other type of metal products that are painted. And then you move into the silicon modified polyester systems. And these are what we call our Weather XL systems. And these are specifically done for building products, for either metal buildings, metal roofings, and that's a better system. And then you move into the best systems. And those best systems are our PVDF or our FEV, which we call our Fluoropon or Alumapon systems. So based on those resin systems, that's how you want to choose your paint. So you really need to understand what your end use is, what's the longevity that you're wanting, what kind of environments that it's going to be involved in. So that's really in the crux of deciding what type of paint systems you want. And of course, you have to factor in cost. You can always look at the good, better, best, and the best being the Fluoropons and Alumapons, which are your PVDFs and FEVEs.
So that's a good background. Does every manufacturer offer all of those different paint types as a rule, Kerry?
Yeah, I mean, most paint companies will offer those types of systems. At Sherwin-Williams, some of the unique things that we do with our different systems, we may have some textures. And our textures could come from chemical reactions or actual particle textures. You have your smooth set textures, but it's all in the formulation and how you use not only the resins, but the pigments and the solvents and the additives to those systems to make sure you're getting the abrasion resistance, the corrosion resistance, flexibility, and all those different components that are needed to make sure the end use of your project is successful.
Yeah, I know when I first got in the industry, I definitely underestimated the amount of science that went into paint, right? And all
Oh
the
yeah,
different, even the inorganic pigments versus organics and all of that. So there's certainly
absolutely.
there's a lot to it. So you mentioned that most paint companies do kind of offer the full suite. Let's shift a little bit to most metal panel manufacturers like McElroy. Is
Uh-huh.
Kynar widely available from everybody? Is it more of a specialty product for some manufacturers? Talk to us a little bit about that, if you would.
So when you get into the best systems, the systems are available, but if people are looking for extreme quality, durability, chalking resistance, fade resistance, corrosion resistance, abrasion resistance, this is where McElroy's product that they've selected using the PVDFs, the Kynar systems, which we call our fluoropon systems, and some of our FEVE systems, which are the Alumipon systems. Those are the best systems that you can get. So if you're really looking to have something that's going to have a good amount of longevity and that can stand up to not only the test of time, but the test of the environments that the buildings are in, absolutely, that's hands down the best product.
Yeah, I'd also like to add here, some of our customers, right, like you mentioned, right, we have a lot of our customers carry that Kynar, that best performing coating, where it becomes some of what our Fluoropon family will offer is the print systems, our chameleon color shifting effects, and those are more rare to find from your metal suppliers or your coil coaters. Those do have more complexity for application. They'll tend to have more coats. Just quality control of those are a little bit different. So you will find those differences between our coil coaters and what they're able to run or they're choosing to run if they have that demand for more of those specialty effects. So not everybody's capable of doing the printing that you'll see on garage doors or even just on buildings and homes. I've seen that recently. Or just the color shifts that some of these stadiums or some of the nicer retail stores like to have.
Absolutely. So, Rachel, anything from your standpoint that should factor into people's decision about which system besides the tips that Carrie gave us earlier?
Yeah, so obviously you want to choose your best product line first, right? You want to understand where the project is going to be located at. So a lot of the times when we work with architects, we want to understand, are you looking for a color that is going to be at a 90-degree angle? Are you looking to have, sometimes some of them, they're like, we want people as they drive by to see a different color change or have a certain, something shiny that stands out. So really understanding from a more of an art, what they're wanting, but also, are you wanting something that is going to be super reflective, where it's incredibly sunny and you're going to always have those UV rays that are strong? Then we're going to talk about what color is best for that, right? In any type of space, we're not gonna recommend you put the brightest color out there, because no matter how good our systems are, that color space is just going to naturally, deteriorate faster than other colors, right? Think about a red shirt out in the sun versus a white shirt, right? So we like to think about, are you putting it close to the water? Are you going to put it somewhere where it's desert conditions that you're always going to have a sunny space? So those things do matter when we're thinking about what type of product to choose, but also what color space to choose for that. I know near airports we like to have, I think some of those specs are around having less shinier finishes because of the air traffic, right? So it just depends on location as well, and what architects want to have a final look at. Sometimes it's aesthetics, and sometimes protection goes over that, right?
That's a really good point. And one thing I think is really interesting or valuable for our listeners to know is that we are very lucky to have a partner in Sherwin-Williams along on all of our projects. And so if somebody gets into some unique applications, we're all able to tap you guys and get your insight. Coincidentally, actually, I think we sent an email to Kerry this morning about a project at JFK Airport where they're worried about excessive bird droppings, right? And so that's a good example of where we can take and leverage you guys' experience and expertise. So we really value that, and I know our customers do.
Yeah.
Let's talk about primer a minute. Does everything get the same kind of primer, or are there differences for different systems?
So for primers, we do have different primers for depending on your end use. Okay. So if we think about an HVAC unit, you're going to be more exposed to water just naturally because of the use of it. We'll choose primers that are more maybe a thicker film, similar to our coastal products. So we want to metal is going to oxidize as soon as you're going to have meeting with that water and moisture in the air. So what the primer is going to do is going to be that first layer of defense, working with a pre-treatment. So if you're looking at a coastal area, we're going to recommend a thicker film primer. If you're working with something that's going to have it may not be near the coast, but it's going to have a lot of exposure to moisture, we also may choose or recommend a thicker film primer. Then there's some primers that offer more flexibility. So depending on certain parts that you're forming, you may require tighter bends. Primers can help with that. So we do have a wide selection of primers depending on what the end use is. So Kerry mentioned she works with manufactured products, so those require a lot more flexibility when forming. So we have primers for that. And again, just water exposure, bird droppings, if you're going to have a lot of exposure to acidity, that also is a factor that we consider.
Absolutely. Let's, Kerry, can you talk to us a little bit about maybe chalk and fade, and maybe start with just a basic, explanation, definition of what it is, how it's measured, in case some of our listeners aren't familiar, and then also maybe talk a little bit about color selection and how that matters in your paint system.
With our various systems, especially when you get into the Kynar PVDF systems and the FEVE systems, they do have a substantial warranty. And the warranty that goes along with these systems when the metal is put onto a roof or made into a building, or the pre-painted metal, one of the things that we look at is, there's a amount of time that's for film integrity, and then you hear the terminology chalk and fade. So what chalk is chalk occurs when there begins to be a breakdown in the resins on those systems. And what happens is over time, because of UV rays, you will get some breakdowns of the resin. And what this actually does is it makes, if you were to go to a building that was, maybe not the best system, and it was 60 years old, and you run your fingers down the painted panel and you get a white chalky substance, that's chalk. That's what is considered the chalking part of it. So with the chalking part of it, especially when you get into these best systems, that they become so much more durable and so much more resistance to UV rays, especially when you get into some of the solar reflective systems. That chalking does not happen as quickly. We have a test fence down in Fort Myers, Florida, that's been there longer than I've been alive, actually. So that's not much, but yes. So we've had panels out there that are 50 plus years old that they still retain their color, and they are not chalking significantly like you might see in some of the less like the good systems, like your S&P systems, because they are the more durable PVDF and FEVE systems. And the way that they measure chalking is they look at how much that chalking is occurring over a period of time. And we do this at our Fort Myers test fence. They measure this on a yearly basis and looking at the panels out there and how they chalk. So as it chalks, there's a scale between 10 and 1. 10 showing the least amount of chalking, and 1 being the most amount of chalking. So that's something that we monitor on a regular basis down at our test field in Fort Myers, Florida, which is a very UV moisture, like the worst environmental conditions you can get. Fort Myers, Florida will offer it for you. And then fade. Fade is a product of what we call the delta E. And the delta E is the starting point of the color. So like when you first paint a coil and then you make your panels, that's the standard color and that's the starting point of the color. And then over time, as they read the color again, the difference in that color from the standard, the starting point to where it is at that time is what's called the delta E. And that's what fade is involved is. How is that color performing? How much is it fading over a period of time? And what happens with that is when the gloss starts to break down, that's when you start getting the fade. The gloss that is applied in the paint, that's when you start getting the fade. And so that's what fading is. It's taking it from the starting point to where it is in that point in time. And there's a scale attached to that as well. The higher number, the higher amount of fading, the lower number, the lower amount of fading. As Rachel had mentioned earlier, when she was talking about color, like paint selections and things like that, and talking about color space, that's where you also have to place some considerations. There are some color spaces that fade more rapidly than others. If Kathy, I don't know if you've ever been to our paint school in Bowling Green, but our great friend and he's retired from Sherwin-Williams, but he was a remarkable man, Rick Afton. He would always say, purple is your worst color. If you're going to have something bright purple, that one's going to fade the most. So that's a color that's not a good color space. And you mentioned a little bit about organic and inorganic pigments. So inorganic pigments are much more stable than organic pigments. So if you get into these color spaces that are like these ultra bright yellows and ultra bright blues and just really crazy color schemes that are super bright in color saturations, those are colors that may require organic pigments, and organic pigments aren't as stable as inorganic pigments. So that can also reduce the amount of or increase the amount of fade that you would get over time, as well as chalking.
That's a great point. And so that's one of the reasons you'll see manufacturers, McElroy included, you may have different paint warranties for like our bright red color. Yeah. We do a lot of work with Home Depot orange, right? And so again, those are tough colors. And so you always want to ask those questions of any manufacturer you're working with to confirm, what your paint warranty will be for the specific color you're working on. Yeah. Most of the standard earth tones you're in good shape, but when you step out of those, as both Rachel and Kerry have alluded to, you can start to get into some shakier ground where you need to ask some questions.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you guys have, sorry, go ahead, Rachel.
In coatings, we like grays.
Yeah, there you go.
Sometimes when we speak to architects about projects, and they talk about, we all have different perspectives and different goals, right? I'm looking at what's going to give you something that's going to last on a building as long as possible. From an architectural perspective, from a marketing perspective, we want, they want the flashy. What's going to make a person look towards that building? Why should you go to Home Depot versus a different
Right.
color, right? So it's that brightness. That's, we have to talk about what we're sacrificing when we're choosing a more flashier, brighter color. Maybe it's going to require, you're not going to get that longer warranty length, right? And so we try to have a lot of the architects or a lot of those people that are further removed from the performance aspect to consider this whenever they're choosing a color for a company. A lot of the time we've had them say, we want the building to also match our shirts and our marketing assets. We're like, that's great, but those are not going to stand out in the sun as long like that building will, right?
Right.
Bright, flashy banners are great indoors. But if you put those out in the sun, a purple banner, it's definitely going to fade.
Yes,
Yeah,
it's just a matter of when, right?
right.
So,
Just another point that I think that we should interject on color space and choosing of colors and performance and things. If you're concerned about solar reflectivity aspects of a paint system, also when you get into some of those color spaces that require a organic pigment, you're going to sacrifice solar reflectivity as well. I just wanted to kind of throw that in there because I think that that's also the thing that people really need to be cognizant of when they go into those brighter, flashier color spaces.
Yeah, I know we worked closely with you all today and Carrie in terms of sometimes we'll get a request and, we'll say this is what we can offer you, but this isn't going to come at the cost of other things that we're going to have to give up. But here's a color space that'll get you both. And sometimes it's we're compromising and
Yeah.
all right, we're going to meet in the middle about this red, this purple, right?
right.
Yeah.
And again, that's why we're so lucky to have you guys as partners. So, in the last few minutes, we've talked about architectural products quite a bit, which makes total sense, right? A lot of times they're into color, but we have a lot of contractors and residential listeners to our podcast as well. And so I want to spend just a minute about the different paint systems and performance with regards to color. So, one of the things we talk about sometimes is at McElroy, we've taken a very big Kynar 500 Fluoripon stance. And so we're one of the few manufacturers that actually stock that in a lighter gauge. And the reason we do that is because we want to give the best product to our customers. And the price difference is not as big as many people think because we're a stocking member of it. But talk to us a little bit about a customer that maybe is looking at a matte black versus a white and what difference maybe selecting a paint system in those applications should matter.
Do you mean in terms of solar reflectivity or durability? What aspect of comparing a matte black to a white?
Sure. Let's start with fade and chalk.
Sure.
Is one going to perform different in an SMP system versus a Kynar markedly?
So depending on when we talk about matte blacks, and you will obviously, and naturally, just because of the color space, you are obviously going to notice a fade in a black color versus a white, right? Because if things fade lighter, unless it's a darker or a yellow or white, you're not going to notice a fade, right? But in terms of comparing SMP and PVDF, I would say it depends on if for a residential home, SMP really drives that market there. But if you're looking at those brighter colors, we would definitely consider PVDF or Fluoripon brand to give you that longer lasting color. Simply because, like Carrie mentioned, our resin systems, so that PVDF definitely carries that stronger, think about that stronger foundation in general, based on just foundation of chemistry and what those bonds are doing at a molecular level. So if you're wanting something that's a brighter color that's going to last you a long time, you want to choose that best, right? If somebody wants that purple roof.
We find it even for like your evergreens, right, and your blacks, and even some of your dark browns. You just get that difference in gloss, or what we call curb appeal. That holds much better when you go to those Kynar systems so you get a lot of bang for not a lot of buck, is what we find.
It does have a wider range for gloss, so there are times, so we talked about matte black, right? But then you have those, if for whatever reason somebody wants a bright white that is glossy, you're going to be able to get that in an SMP versus a PVDF will end up adding a clear coat on top. So then you add an additional layer.
That's a good point.
Yeah, so it just depends. But gloss range for SMP in a 2-coat system is larger. And then you also have our crinkle products that are also available. So that would be available in SMP mostly. So in a matte black crinkle, that.
Right.
On the FEVEs, our Lumipon systems, which is that's in that best group. And McElroy does use some of the fluoroponds and uses predominantly fluoropon, which is the PVDF Kynar. But they also use, we've done projects with y'all that we use the FEVE to get the higher gloss levels. So in my perspective, McElroy does a really good job of balancing out and working with us to decide what's best for that customer and what they want, what that bang for the buck that they want. But like Rachel said, bottom line, the resins are the foundation of the system. So the Kynar, the PVDFs, the FEVEs that McElroy uses, that resin system has the best foundation for a complete paint system.
Absolutely. The other thing I know when customers are asking me for a recommendation, or even, our sales reps, is this going to be a phased project, right? So whether it's a residential or whether it's a school, and if you're going to add another building or another wing in 5 years or 10 years, that's another reason where you might want to consider that Kynar
Yes.
or over the SMP products. So.
Absolutely.
Speaking of older buildings, I'm sure we have listeners out there that have got a building that maybe is still pretty structurally sound, right? But maybe it's tired, maybe it needs a refresh. Maybe to Rachel's point, somebody bought it and they want to come in and do different corporate colors, right? What options do our listeners have to accomplish those kinds of goals?
So that's a great question. Sherwin-Williams has always, we look at how can we be a total solution for our customers and our customers, the end users that are having the buildings built. We partnered with a company, it's called Watts Removal Product. Watts Removal Product is an all-natural product. It's environmentally safe to use. It can be used anywhere from contractors to maintenance personnel to the average homeowner. Basically, it's a kit that you get. You paint on the, not really paint, but you put onto the building or the roof, and it takes off dirt. It reduces chalking and makes that surface come back to a more brighter surface and remove that chalk. It removes environmental like mold, mildew, graffiti. If you're in an area that maybe somebody has a commercial building and they're concerned about graffiti, it'll remove graffiti. And what the best thing about our partnership with the Watts removal system is we did a lot of work with them for us to partner with them as an organization. And the biggest part about that is if you use this product just for that fresh up of the building, it does not void the warranty of the system that you have on that building, which is a huge, huge factor. Because people may go out and say, I'm going to go just buy Joe Schmo's cleaning product, and they put it on the system, and all of a sudden they're having problems. But they voided their warranty by not using an approved system that we have partnered with to not void that warranty. So partnering with Watts Removal System has been a really good thing for both Sherwin-Williams, our customers, and our customers and use customers, be it a contractor, a maintenance professional, or a homeowner, basically. Now, if the building is substantially old, like, 50, 60 years old, and it's still structurally sound, we do have recommended repaint specialists that are all across the nation that we would recommend for people to go to have their buildings repainted and freshened up. And these would be vetted repaint specialists.
Right. And in that case, if somebody gets a building completely repainted from one of your approved applicators, can I get a warranty, or is that not available?
If it's already past our standard warranty time and the repaint of so our warranty time is what we give when the building's first put up, and that's when that time starts. After a repaint, that warranty has been ended, and typically if they're into that situation, they're going to be repainting after the warranty has ended anyway.
Exactly, because the paint systems these days are so good, right? They last far past warranty periods.
Yes, absolutely.
So, yep. Rachel, let's jump to you for a minute. You alluded earlier to, maybe you're in the desert and maybe you're in a coast, but I want to dig into that a little bit more. Talk to us a little bit about how geography and climate affects panels and colors and paint systems differently, if you could.
So one of the main things that we do to understand this, Carrie mentioned this, we have a test fence in Fort Myers, which will give you that exposure to the sun, continuous exposure to the sun. Also, it's something to consider is humidity. One thing about we also think about is the abrasion resistance. So if you think about something in the coast, it's covered by our test fence data. We go look at it and see how something's performing. But then we also think about something in a desert. You're having those sandstorms or high winds. Those things also impact what we consider and what we'll recommend for the technology. So if we'll say, at some point we'll say, yes, let's do a PVDF and our best product out there, but let's go ahead and add in an additional coat because it's going to have these additional natural factors that are going to impact its performance, right? So we're constantly looking at the test fence data is our best. I think one of our best assets that we have, because no matter how much accelerated testing we do or simulation of outdoors, having those panels out there in the real world and having them go through hurricane season after hurricane season is the best indication of what we'll recommend. And what color spaces will do the best.
Yep, that's a great point. Let's talk a little bit more about the test fence. You guys have both mentioned it, right? So let's give our listeners a little bit of a size of scope. Can we talk about the number of clips and you mentioned hurricanes, Rachel. What does happen if a hurricane's coming?
So what our panels, and we have thousands of panels and thousands of projects out there. So one of the things that during hurricane season, during storms, our team out there, and sometimes even our other sites will come in and support, help take down those panels, help take down those racks, let the storm pass, and then bring them back up. Because then you're not looking at, you still get that weather effect, the high winds, but you're not blowing them away and losing that data there, right? And so the team goes back out, puts them back in, and depending on some projects, some of us, if we're testing out something new, a new color space, or we just introduce something to make improvements, we'll request data after a couple years and see how it's performing. Some of us will go out there and actually look at the panels ourselves. So it really, it does help us to have that out there. We are obviously always looking at weather and if we need to take those down, but they come right back up as soon as those high winds are gone.
Yeah, I have, worked with Sherwin for over 30 years here at McElroy, and the first time somebody mentioned the idea of having to take the test fence down and put it back up, it blew me away. I just never thought about it, but it makes common sense that you guys would have to do that. But what a mammoth undertaking in the middle of a storm. But to your point, you're going to lose all your data, years and years of data if you don't. So,
Right. And the other benefit of the test fence that we get too is like for our solar reflective products, which McElroy offers the solar reflective products, and that's primarily the systems that they want to look at because they are the best systems for color retention, gloss retention, and all those things. That's also where we get our solar reflectivity data as well. So it tells us over the scope of time how much solar reflectivity is this color space giving. So we learn a ton not only about chalk and fade, but also the solar reflectivity of the product as well.
Let's talk. We talked a little earlier about residential. We talked a little bit about architectural. Carrie, can you kind of walk us through just high level, obviously, because we've talked several times about, certain projects maybe have different requirements, but as a rule of thumb, can you talk a little bit about paint and paint systems? And maybe even colors in some of the different project type spaces, residential, architectural, post frame, etc.
Yeah, so I think in selecting a paint system, the first thing that you have to understand is your end use. Is it going to be commercial? Is it going to be highly exposed to a commercial environment, like a commercial industrial environment? Is it going to be residential? All those factors in the end use, that's probably one of the most important things that you have to look at. And the scope of the project. What's the intention of the project? What's the performance levels that are required? It's a little bit about everything that we've kind of talked about during this time together. Geographic locations, where is it going to be? Is it going to be next to the water? Is it going to be up in the mountains and have a lot of snow? Those are all factors that all have to be taken into consideration in deciding what paint system that not only what paint system that you use, but what color space that you want to be in. A lot in the more industrial or governmental type projects, school projects, and those types of things, they may have specific specifications that they have for, salt spray or UV and all these different other things that can be involved. All those factors have to be taken into consideration. I think geographically, what you look at, both in residential and commercial, and all the different levels where you would use building products, there's a lot of geographic color spaces that people like to be in. I don't know why, but on the East Coast, they really like this. We have our gallery blue, or isn't it gallery or galaxy blue? I can't remember. I think it's gallery blue. They like that color out there. I just got back from Idaho. Everybody loves evergreen up in Idaho because it's so beautiful. So I think it's all those different factors. It's everything in combined that what we spoke about, that we've been speaking about, makes how you make your paint decision and what system that you want to use. And like I said, also the geographic region and the color spaces that, like New Mexico, they love the terracottas and those colors that are more earthy looking.
Right.
So there's just a ton of factors that go in, but just understanding your end results that you want and the project's performance results and the scope of it and the end use, that's the most important factors.
So Carrie, you were just talking about that's a lot of factors to consider, right? But it makes total sense. Again, every project's different. Can you talk a little bit about sustainability and maybe what changes and influences has that made in the paint space?
Of course, it has made and will continue to make a lot of a lot of impression into the paint systems that are developed and the continuing development of new paint systems. Way back when, nobody ever thought about solar reflectivity in their paint systems. And then, people started realizing, energy costs, environmental concerns, how can we reduce the cost of energy and make our systems better systems? And you got solar reflectivity systems that came in. We've always looked at, from Sherwin-Williams standpoint, is they always want to make sure that they're investing not only in the past, but also into the future to make sure that we continue to provide good products for our customers and our customers' end use. As a company and an organization, we have a very strong commitment not only to our stakeholders, but our employees, our customers, and the community and our end use customers and the communities that they live in. And this is everything from coil coating all the way down to our paint stores. I know there's a lot of different environmental regulations that are coming into play. It's happening right now, and everybody's looking at how we can become a more successful, environmentally friendly, and sustainable company. With that, I can assure you that our R&D department is working very hard and very diligently on many projects right now. Of course, those aren't out in the public yet, but they are happening and will continue to happen to make sure that we stay up not only to meet governmental regulations, but to also make sure that we're environmentally and sustainability responsible to the people that we serve. Like I said, from employees to customers to end users to the communities that we're in.
And we're the same way at McElroy. We've taken a very big initiative to put solar on our manufacturing facilities, right? And that started off as something good, maybe initially for us and on our energy bills, but it really has turned into a very big internal and intentional community swell of trying to do the right thing for the environment. So
yeah, absolutely.
And I think as more and more companies do that, we have to do that, right, with all of the issues we're facing now. So Rachel, let's throw to you for just a minute. I want to kind of revisit something you talked about earlier. I know you talked about the chameleons, Could you dive into explaining a little bit more what that is? And then we are just seeing tremendous interest in wood grains these days. And so if you would talk a little bit about, the wood grain technology and some of the cool things happening there.
So obviously, the color spaces that we end up color matching for are based on trends that are happening out. Sometimes it starts with fashion and then it translates into building. Sometimes it's the building trends that translate. It's all interconnected, and a lot of the times we don't realize this, but it's what is like psychology of color and what's going to bring people to focus more on this marketing asset versus the other companies, right? So some of the things that we are seeing from a architectural aspect is obviously the chameleon colors. We're seeing, you think about anytime there's a World Cup, you think about those stadiums that are being built. And so there's those things are going to drive those flashier colors. For more of the residential, what we're seeing is the wood grain, or just not only wood grain, but like emulating nature. So recently did a project where a customer wanted their shed to look like a camouflage out in their in their home, and we worked with our coders to have a system that looks like leaves, and so that was a pretty interesting project. So from a residential aspect, what we're seeing from the trends are more of that nature aspect, and so that's where that wood grain is coming from. You wanted, a lot of the minimalist, organic designs are what's driving this. So we're constantly getting color matches where they recently I had one where they put wood on the wood pieces in the stores, but they wanted the outside of the building to have the similar color as the wood grain of the outside. So we got a piece of wood and we were, trying to match that, right? So they're trying to have everything match up. And so we'll get different patterns and we'll do our best. I know recently we had one where they wanted it to look like corroded metal. Interesting, right? Or protecting the metal from looking like corroded pattern. So yeah, it just depends on what that year the designs are out there. And that's what we'll see a lot of our color matches come in, and we'll see little trends of this month everybody requested a purple pattern or a purple texture. Next month it's an orange high glossy finish. So yeah, it just depends on what projects are going out there. And times where, if I know a lot of in the Middle East, they're building new cities and very futuristic, so they'll do these chameleon colors. So it's all over the place. It just depends on what the project is and what's coming up.
So when you say a chameleon color, give our listeners a feel for the range. I mean, can a white panel take and suddenly turn purple if the light hits it a certain way, or are they subtle differences?
Yeah, so one of the recent requests that we've had were for one of those crystals that people carry around for good energy, and it was white and purple. I think it's an amethyst. And so they wanted a building to look like this. So what this actually does is at face, you're looking at a white building, but as you move around it, it will turn purple. And so we've had other projects that they want black and gold, because it was a very fancy retail store. So what you'll actually see is at that front, it will look gold. And as you move, it'll change slightly green and then black. So we have all those different colors. We'll have a common one, and I think this is mostly probably what I would envision is aquariums. It's a blue-green shift. Okay. So you'll look at it blue, but then as you move to the side, it'll look green. So that's what those chameleons are. You're intentionally introducing what we would call that metamerism or color shifting, and it's a pretty neat effect to have. We also have our novas that if you want just a sparkle across a very uniform sparkle, whether you want it in gold or silver, we do that as well.
So the chameleons and the novas, I'm curious, do they require sunlight for that effect, or does it appear the same on a cloudy day?
So obviously, you'll still see it on a cloudy day, but obviously that sparkle, um, that color shift is going to be a lot more significant on a sunny day, right? But you'll still see it. It's because we'll match the color inside, right, in our lighting. So you're still going to be able to see it, but to get that luster effect, obviously light hitting it makes it much better, right?
Makes sense. Yeah.
Another thing to mention on the prints and the different wood grains and things, the other thing to keep in mind as well is that the actual coil coaters that are applying our paint to your metal, the technology of the coil coaters, not only, I mean, it has increased tremendously. Instead of just having print rolls, now you're seeing coil coaters that are going more into a digital print space. There's a lot going on with the technology advancements within the coil coaters themselves. Um, there's a bunch of coil coaters out there, some new ones coming on. But as that, not only is the paint technology growing leaps and bounds over the years, like with the chameleons and the novas and the micas and the metallics and all these different textures and this, that, and the other. What's nice is going hand in hand is that the coil cutters that are applying our paint are also growing in technology that's going to just continue to offer more variety of what kind of spaces people can go into.
That's a really great point. The whole industry and the series of partners, right, from the steel mills to the coaters, the paint, the coaters,
Absolutely.
even our manufacturing process, we have all made leaps and bounds, I would say, in the last 5 to 10 years for sure,
Oh,
right?
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
that's a really good point. Carrie, if somebody is listening today and they're just really starting to learn about metal roof or wall systems, we unfortunately have thrown a lot of acronyms out today because to us they're second nature, right? PVDFs and
Hmm.
all of those things. But what's a good place for somebody to start if they're really wanting to understand paint systems? Whether it's what to recommend if they're a contractor or if an architect or residential, what to use on their project.
For general information, just for information and learning, if somebody is out there and they want to just go look and learn about different paint systems. The Sherwin-Williams Coil and Extrusion website is a great resource of information. There's information on, what paint system should you be, what do you want from your paint system and how do you choose your paint system? Then there's specific information on our polyester systems that are used in building products. Then the S&P, so the polyester is a good system. The S&P systems, the silicon modified polyester systems, which we call our Weather Excel systems. And then our Kynar PVDF, FEVE, which we call our Fluoroponds and Alumipond systems. There's so much resource information out there that people can go to and really look into it. And then there's also connection resources where if they have a specific question, they can contact us through the website and ask specific questions that they might have. It's also, we have a color lookbook, so people can go out there and see all the different colors that are available in coil and extrusion, as well as all the different color effects like the chameleon and the nova and the micas and the metallics and all that. All that information is out there. So that's a really good starting place for somebody if they really are thinking about, oh, I want to learn more about this. That's a great place to start because it has a ton of resources, a bunch of case studies, like everything that you could ever think of, it's out there. And like I said, everything that we've discussed today is so important in deciding on your paint system. So if they just kind of take that look and say, what is the overall end game that I want to achieve with my paint system? That's where you're going to really focus in and be able to hone in and look at all those factors: in use, environmental, location, color space, specification. If you
Warranty,
that
cost, right?
Yeah, warranties, costs. you really have to understand what the end game is to really choose what paint system that you want.
That's exactly right. And I think the other thing I would add to that is choosing a partner, right? I mean, again, we
Absolutely.
alluded earlier to the fact that McElroy leans heavily on Sherwin and you guys' expertise. And so picking a panel manufacturer is also not a bad place to start your research, whether it's McElroy
Absolutely.
or somebody else. So,
And one thing great about our relationship between McElroy, the Sherwin-Williams and the McElroy, and like I said, I'm the proud account manager for McElroy, and I love the company and I love the people that I work with, and I work with all of them. And what's really neat is they'll come to me with a problem with a customer, and sometimes their customer, the end use customer, will come to me direct and say, "Hey, I got this question." And it's just the open communication, and McElroy does such a good job in helping their customers find the right fit for them, especially like we talked in color space. They'll come to us, we'll discuss the problem or discuss the color. They'll go back to their customer, let them know what's going on. And it just makes for the stream of communication is so important between Sherwin to McElroy and McElroy to their customers. And that's why McElroy has been such a great partner for us, because they really listen and let us help direct too and making good choices so that the end use customer is happy.
well, we appreciate that, but without a doubt, it's a two-way partnership. So,
Absolutely.
ladies, we've kind of reached the end of our time today. Any other special caveats or topics we need to throw out quick before we wrap up?
I can't think of, I think we covered everything that we could.
We did a pretty deep dive, didn't we? All
Yeah, we
right.
did.
Well, before we sign off for the day, can each of you, we'll start with Carrie, let our listeners know how they can connect with you if they'd like to connect or have questions?
Sure. If you'd like to connect to me by email, my email is KERRY period L period CARAWAY @Sherwin.com. Or I can reach always via my cell phone at 281-967-1213.
Great, thanks. And how about you, Rachel?
All right, and for me, I have, because I'm in color science and we have multiple technologies, if you just go to our webpage at coil.com, that will actually reach us, my team. And if you have general questions about any of the technologies that we mentioned today, we have a team that's just sorting through it and we'll get you to the right person. So if it happens to be PVDF or FEV, fluorophon and aluminum, that'll actually get it to my team, and we'll be able to answer any questions regarding in-use or projects or types of technology that we would recommend for you. So again, if you just go to our Sherwin website for coil coating, there is a contact us there, and we will actually be able to see your question there. And should we get to you about 1 to 2 business days?
Fabulous. All right, well, thanks again today for your time, but always for your partnership.
Oh, absolutely.
Have a great rest of the day, everybody.
You too. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Building with Metal podcast, presented by McElroy Metal. To stay up to date with our latest episodes, be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Visit us online at www.mcelroymetal.com for more info and products. Until next time, keep building with metal.